I used to believe I had the perfect marriage. For 6 years, I was Elena Whitmore, the devoted, graceful, and obedient wife of Nicholas Whitmore, a man admired by society for his wealth, intelligence, and charm. From the outside, we looked like a dream. People envied me. They saw a husband who adored his wife, showering her with expensive gifts and whispered affections in public. But behind closed doors, Nicholas was not a man, he was a shadow, vast and inescapable. He didn't hit. He didn't scream. He didn't have to. His control was quieter, deeper, woven into the air I breathed, the words I spoke, the way I dressed. I wasn't his wife. I was his creation, and I never realized how deep his control ran, until I found the room. The house and the rules. Nicholas was meticulous about our home. A grand estate, hidden away in the countryside, built on acres of land with no neighbors for miles. Security cameras everywhere, doors that only he could lock and unlock. A schedule that dictated when I ate, when I slept, when I could go outside. But the worst rule, never go downstairs alone. I obeyed, like I always did. Until one night, when Nicholas was away on a business trip, and the curiosity gnawed at me. I crept down the grand staircase, the floor cold beneath my feet. The house felt different at night, empty, quiet, almost watchful. When I reached the bottom floor, I realized something strange. The bookshelf near his study, one I had dusted countless times, was slightly ajar. A door. My heart pounded. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to. With shaking hands, I pulled the shelf open and stepped inside. And that's when I saw it. The room of secrets. The space was dimly lit, filled with antique furniture and a scent of old paper. At first, it looked like an ordinary study, until I saw the photographs. Dozens of them, all of women, framed, labeled, dated. I stepped closer, scanning the faces. They all had the same look, delicate features, soft smiles, refined elegance. Women who looked like me. Some were old photographs, fading with time. Others were more recent. Too recent. Then, my eyes landed on the most chilling part of the room, the display case. Inside it, a collection of wedding rings. I gasped, my fingers tightening into fists. My mind screamed at me to run, to get out, but I was frozen, because at that moment, I understood. Nicholas had done this before. And if I didn't act fast, I wouldn't be the last. A noise behind me. I turned too quickly, my pulse in my throat. A shadow moved in the doorway. I wasn't alone. I forced myself to breathe. The shadow in the doorway didn't move. For a second, I was convinced Nicholas was standing there, watching me, catching me. But then, nothing. The air was silent, save for the faint hum of the security cameras. I inched forward, peering into the darkness of the hallway. No one was there. Was it my imagination? Or had someone been standing there just moments ago? I swallowed hard, my mind racing. I needed to leave. Now. With trembling hands, I carefully slid the bookshelf door shut, making sure it looked untouched. Then, forcing my legs to move, I walked back upstairs, keeping my pace even. Controlled. Normal. Nicholas had trained me well. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of classical music playing through the house speakers. The same song Nicholas always played when he was home. My stomach dropped. I knew for a fact he wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow. I found him in the kitchen, dressed in his usual black suit, sleeves rolled up as he prepared coffee. His wedding ring gleamed under the light. "You're up early, darling," he said smoothly, pouring a second cup. My throat felt tight. I didn't hear you come in." His gaze flickered to me. Too sharp. Too knowing. "I caught an earlier flight," he said, handing me the cup. His lips curled into a small smile. "Didn't want to be away from my wife for too long." I forced a laugh, even as my fingers clenched around the ceramic. Did he know? The way he watched me felt different. More deliberate. More calculated. I spent the rest of the day trying not to think about the room, but it followed me. Every time Nicholas touched me, I flinched. Every time he asked a question, I hesitated before answering. He noticed. I knew he noticed. By evening, I was exhausted from pretending. I wanted to go upstairs, lock myself in my room, and think. Plan. But just as I turned toward the stairs, Nicholas called out. "Elena." I froze. Slowly, I turned. He was standing by the study, one hand on the door. "That door. Come here," he said, his tone gentle. "I have something to show you." The air left my lungs. This was a test. He knew. He had to know. Still, I walked forward, careful to keep my expression blank. He pushed open the door, revealing his pristine study, his real study. Not the one hidden behind the bookshelf. "Sit," he said. I obeyed. Nicholas sat across from me, leaning forward. His fingers traced slow circles against the armrest of his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. "Elena," he murmured. "Are you happy?" I blinked. "What?" His smile was soft. Deceptive. "Are you happy, darling?" Here, with me. Every nerve in my body screamed lie. Yes, I whispered. He studied me for a long time, his eyes dark and unreadable. Then, his smile widened. I knew you would be, he said. You were made for this life. I swallowed hard. Nicholas reached over, gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. His touch sent ice down my spine. I have to step out for a bit, he said casually, standing. There's a security issue I need to handle. My pulse spiked. Security issue. Did that mean? He walked to the door but then paused, turning back. Oh, and Elena. I lifted my chin, forcing my face into a mask of calm. His eyes gleamed. Don't wander too far. The moment the door shut behind him, my body collapsed into the chair. I was trapped. And he knew it. Nicholas left the estate, but the cameras didn't. That night, I tested the limits of his absence. I tried opening the front door. Locked. I checked the windows. Locked. I even went down to the garage. The car keys were gone. I was sealed in, like always. But there was one thing Nicholas hadn't accounted for. I was done playing his perfect wife. If he wanted a game, I would give him one. I would escape. But first, I needed a plan. And I only had one night to make it. 11:47 p.m. I stood by the window, staring into the darkness beyond the estate walls. The air outside was still, the security lights casting eerie shadows on the manicured lawn. Nicholas wasn't back yet, but I didn't trust it. He could be watching, waiting. I had to move fast. I checked the small backpack I had packed earlier. A pair of shoes, cash I had stashed away over the years. A dark hoodie to hide myself. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as I made my way downstairs. The front door was out of the question, too many cameras. The garage was a trap, I had no keys. That left one option, the servant's exit. It was hidden behind the kitchen, leading to the back of the property. Nicholas barely paid attention to it, because I had never used it before. Until now, I reached the door, my hands shaking as I gripped the handle. Locked. But I wasn't surprised. I had prepared for this. From my pocket, I pulled out a thin metal pin. I had stolen it from Nicholas's desk earlier that day, knowing I might need it. Click, click, click. The lock gave way. My pulse thundered in my ears as I pushed the door open, stepping out into the night. The estate was massive, surrounded by high walls and thick trees. But I knew the layout. I had memorized every exit, every blind spot. I kept low, moving toward the side gate. The fence was too high to climb, but this gate. This was my way out. I reached into my backpack, pulling out the stolen keycard I had taken from Nicholas's office days ago. I slid it against the scanner. Nothing. My stomach dropped. I tried again. Beep. Denied. No, 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 no. The system had been changed. Nicholas knew. Panic clawed at my chest. I spun, scanning the perimeter. There had to be another way out. And then I saw it, a weak spot in the fence, near the garden wall. It wasn't much, just a section where the metal had loosened over time. But it was enough. I sprinted toward it, adrenaline burning through me. I grabbed the edge, pulling myself up. I was halfway over when the alarms blared. The entire estate lit up like a stadium. Elena. The voice sent ice through my veins. Nicholas stood at the entrance of the house, his suit unbuttoned, his sleeves rolled up, like he had been waiting for this moment. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself over the fence, landing hard on the other side. Pain shot up my leg, but I pushed forward, running into the trees. I could hear him behind me. Calm footsteps. Unhurried. He wasn't chasing me. He was stalking me. Elena, he called, his voice still soft. Come back now, and I'll pretend this never happened. I ran faster. Branches slashed at my arms. My breath came in ragged gasps. The city lights were up ahead, I just had to keep going. Then, a car engine roared to life. No, no, Nicholas was coming after me. I forced my legs to move faster, sprinting toward the road. I reached into my pocket, gripping the stolen phone I had hidden for weeks. I had one number memorized. One person I could trust. I hit call. Please, I gasped. I need you. Now. The headlights grew brighter behind me. Nicholas was seconds away. Then, tires screeched. A second car swerved into the road, blocking his path. I lunged forward as the door flew open. And strong arms pulled me inside. The door slammed shut. We sped off, leaving Nicholas behind in a cloud of dust. I collapsed against the seat, my entire body shaking. I turned my head, my vision blurry, my pulse thundering. The driver looked at me, eyes filled with concern. Breathe, Elena, he said. You're safe now. I exhaled a ragged breath. I was free. But I knew one thing for sure, Nicholas wouldn't stop. And this wasn't over. Not yet. The city lights blurred outside the car window, streaking past in neon and gold. My breath was still uneven, my body thrumming with adrenaline. I turned to the driver, my pulse steadying. Thank you. My voice was hoarse. He nodded, gripping the wheel tighter. Where do you want to go? I hadn't thought that far ahead. I had spent so long planning my escape that I hadn't planned what came after. Nicholas wouldn't stop. Not after this. I had humiliated him, defied him. If I disappeared, he would hunt me down. If I fought back, I had to be smarter. I straightened, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Somewhere safe. The driver hesitated. There's only one place that's safe from Nicholas. I met his gaze, my stomach twisting. I already knew what he was going to say. You have to take him down first. The trap that was always there. We pulled into an underground parking lot. The concrete walls were damp, the flickering lights casting long shadows. I stepped out of the car, pulling the hood of my jacket over my head. My legs were sore, but I forced myself forward. The driver led me through a metal door and up a narrow flight of stairs. At the top, I found myself in a dimly lit apartment, the windows covered with blackout curtains. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. For now, I turned to face the person who had just saved my life. Gabriel, a name I had barely spoken in years. A name Nicholas hated. Gabriel had been my closest friend before Nicholas took over my life. Before he pulled me into his world and erased everyone who could remind me of who I used to be. I swallowed hard. Why did you help me? He leaned against the table, arms crossed. Because I knew this day would come. I frowned. What does that mean? Gabriel's jaw tightened. It means Nicholas didn't just ruin your life. He ruined mine too. I blinked. What? He let out a slow breath. Elena, I didn't just find you tonight. I've been watching, waiting. My stomach twisted. Why? Gabriel's eyes darkened. Because I knew Nicholas would never let you go. So I planned for this. And now, he straightened, stepping toward me. Now it's time to destroy him. Gabriel pulled out a folder and tossed it onto the table. Everything I have on Nicholas is in there. I hesitated before picking it up. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the pages. Bank statements, property records, offshore accounts. There were surveillance photos too, Nicholas with politicians, businessmen, people I had never even known he was involved with. I swallowed hard. He's worse than I thought. Gabriel let out a dry laugh. You have no idea. I met his gaze. How do we stop him? Gabriel leaned forward. Nicholas doesn't lose. Not unless you make him. A chill ran down my spine. What are you saying? He exhaled. You can't just run. You have to fight. My breath hitched. Fight Nicholas. I had spent years trapped in his world, suffocating under his control. Now Gabriel was telling me to walk back into the fire. But then I thought about the look on Nicholas's face when I escaped. The rage. The control slipping from his hands. And for the first time in years, I felt something other than fear. I felt anger. I met Gabriel's gaze, my voice stronger than before. What do we do first? Gabriel smirked. First, we hit his weakness. I frowned. Nicholas doesn't have weaknesses. Gabriel's eyes gleamed. Yes, he does. He pulled out another file, flipping it open to a photo of a woman. Beautiful, polished, familiar. I sucked in a sharp breath. That's Valeria, Nicholas's fiancée before me, the one who had vanished. Gabriel nodded. She's not dead, Elena. My heart pounded. Then where is she? Gabriel's lips curled into a knowing smile. She's waiting for you. The room felt smaller, suffocating. I stared at the photo, my pulse hammering in my ears. Valeria, the woman before me, the woman who had vanished without a trace. And now Gabriel was telling me she was alive. That she had survived. I swallowed hard. Where is she? Gabriel leaned back, watching me carefully. She's in hiding. From Nicholas. He gave me a knowing look. From everything. I set the photo down, trying to quiet the storm inside me. And she wants to help. Gabriel let out a slow breath. She doesn't know you're coming. But trust me, she'll want to. I hesitated. Something about this felt too perfect. Too easy. Gabriel must have seen it on my face because he leaned in, voice softer. Elena, Nicholas didn't just control you. He controlled her, too. And when she tried to escape, he destroyed her life. I looked down at the photo again. Valeria had been Nicholas's fiancée. If she was anything like me, she had been molded, shaped, controlled, until she wasn't useful anymore. Until she fought back. I exhaled sharply. Where is she? Gabriel's lips curled into a smirk. Somewhere Nicholas won't expect. Where is she? Gabriel's lips curled into a smirk. Somewhere Nicholas won't expect. The next night, we drove for hours. Gabriel didn't tell me where we were going, only that it had to be now. I spent most of the ride watching the road behind us, convinced Nicholas's men would appear at any moment. He wouldn't let this go. Gabriel kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near his gun. Relax, he murmured. He's not following us. I wanted to believe him. But I had lived under Nicholas's thumb for too long to believe in luck. We finally pulled into a small, run-down motel on the outskirts of the city. Gabriel parked at the far end of the lot, near a door with peeling paint and a broken light above it. She's in there, he said. I hesitated, gripping the door handle. If Valeria was truly like me, would she even let me in? I forced a steady breath. Then, I got out and knocked. A long silence. Then, the sound of locks clicking. The door cracked open just enough for me to see dark, wary eyes staring back at me. I exhaled. Valeria. The door didn't open any further. Then, slowly, she stepped into the light. I barely recognized her. The woman Nicholas had once paraded around at elite parties was gone. The Valeria standing in front of me now was thinner, her once glossy hair cut short, her features sharper. Hardened. She stared at me, something unreadable in her gaze. Then she spoke, her voice quieter than I expected. You're the new me, aren't you? I swallowed. Not anymore. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then, without a word, she let me in. The motel room was small, barely furnished. A single bag sat near the door, like she was ready to run at any moment. She moved to the window, peeking through the curtains before turning back to me. How did you find me? I glanced at Gabriel. He remained by the door, arms crossed. I had a feeling you'd want to talk. Valeria's eyes flickered back to me. She studied me, as if piecing together a puzzle. Then, she let out a humorless laugh. I should have known, she murmured. That he'd find another. I clenched my fists. I'm not another. I'm the last. She tilted her head. And yet, here you are. Running. I'm not running. Valeria arched a brow. No. I stepped closer. I want to end him. Something shifted in her expression. Silence stretched between us. Then, she smirked. Well, she said, sinking into the chair by the window. Now you have my attention. We talked for hours. Valeria told me everything, how she had met Nicholas, how he had shaped her, how he had nearly destroyed her. How he had faked her death. Nicholas doesn't let go, she murmured, staring at the floor. I thought disappearing was my only chance. But you're still looking over your shoulder. She met my gaze. Aren't you? I didn't answer. She exhaled, tapping a finger against the armrest. So, you want to take him down. Tell me, Elena, do you even know how? I glanced at Gabriel. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a single sheet of paper. He handed it to her. She skimmed it, then frowned. What is this? Gabriel leaned in. Nicholas's Achilles heel. Valeria scoffed. Nicholas doesn't have one. Gabriel's smirk was sharp. He does. Valeria looked at the paper again, her eyes narrowing. This is a name. His real name, Gabriel said. The one he buried years ago. The tension in the room thickened. For the first time, Valeria looked uncertain. How did you find this? Gabriel didn't answer, but I saw it, the way Valeria's grip tightened on the paper. She wasn't just surprised. She was afraid. I stepped closer. What is it? She didn't look at me. Then, finally, she whispered a name. One I had never heard before. One that made Gabriel stiffen. And then, Valeria looked up, eyes sharp. Determined. This changes everything. Valeria's fingers tightened around the paper. Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. The name she had whispered was still ringing in my ears. It wasn't Nicholas. It wasn't even close. I glanced at Gabriel, but he wasn't looking at me. His expression had darkened, calculating, tense. What is it? I asked. Valeria finally looked up, her expression unreadable. You don't know, do you? She murmured. A chill ran through me. Know what? She hesitated. Then, she slid the paper back toward Gabriel, shaking her head. This isn't just a name, she said. This is his real identity. Gabriel nodded slowly, watching her. Go on. Valeria let out a slow breath. Nicholas isn't Nicholas. He became him. The words didn't make sense. What does that mean? I pressed. Valeria tapped the paper. It means the man you knew, the man who controlled your life, was someone else before all of this. Before you. Before me. I frowned. And, her gaze flickered toward Gabriel, then back to me. His past wasn't just erased, she said quietly. It was buried. My stomach twisted. I wasn't naive. I knew Nicholas had secrets, more than I could count. But this wasn't just a secret. This was a lie so big he had to become someone else to keep it hidden. I swallowed hard. How do you know this? Valeria's eyes darkened. Because I tried to leave once, too. And when I did, she exhaled shakily. I saw things I wasn't supposed to. Gabriel's voice was calm, but firm. What did you see? Valeria hesitated, as if weighing whether to trust us. Then, she said the one thing I never expected. I saw the grave. The room felt colder. I stared at her, barely breathing. What grave? Valeria licked her lips, leaning back in her chair. Years ago, when I first tried to leave Nicholas, I started digging. Trying to understand why he was the way he was. Why he never let go of control. She swallowed. I found a record of his old name. It led me to a town. And in that town, she exhaled sharply. There was a grave with his name on it. My pulse pounded. Gabriel leaned forward. His real name. She nodded. And she met his gaze. It was empty. A heavy silence. I barely heard my own voice when I spoke. You're saying he faked his own death? Valeria's fingers drummed against the table. Not just his. Someone else's too. Gabriel inhaled sharply. Who? Valeria's eyes flickered toward the paper again. Then, she said a second name. And this time, Gabriel cursed. I stiffened. What? Gabriel's hands curled into fists. His expression darkened in a way I had never seen before. This just got bigger than us. I felt sick. Bigger than us. Bigger than Nicholas controlling my life, faking Valeria's death, and hunting me like prey. What the hell had we just uncovered? I turned to Valeria, my voice shaking. Who was the second name? She hesitated. Then, quietly, Nicholas's twin. I sat back, my mind reeling. He had a twin. Valeria nodded. He did. My heart was pounding. Where is he now? Valeria's expression was unreadable. That's the thing, she murmured. No one knows. I swallowed. Gabriel exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. This explains why he wiped his past. I turned to him. Why? Gabriel met my gaze. Because if his twin is still alive, Nicholas isn't the only one playing this game. The air in the room shifted. A weight settled on my chest. I had spent years fearing Nicholas. But now, for the first time, I realized there might be someone even worse out there. I stared at Valeria, my pulse racing. Nicholas had a twin. She nodded. A brother. Same face. Same blood. But not the same man. Gabriel swore under his breath, standing abruptly. He paced the small room, running a hand through his hair. This changes everything, he muttered. I turned to Valeria. What happened to him? She hesitated. No one knows for sure. I narrowed my eyes. But you know something. She let out a slow breath. I know that one day, Nicholas had a brother. And the next, he didn't. A chill ran down my spine. What are you saying? I pressed. She met my gaze. I'm saying the grave I found wasn't just empty. It was staged. Silence. Gabriel stopped pacing. His jaw tightened. Staged, he repeated. Valeria nodded. The records were fake. The date of death was falsified. The burial papers, non-existent. There wasn't even a death certificate, just a news article saying Nicholas's twin had died in an accident. Gabriel folded his arms. And, Valeria's lips parted. Then, quietly, there was no accident. I felt my stomach twist. You're saying Nicholas faked his twin's death? Valeria's expression was unreadable. I'm saying either he did, or someone else did it for him. Gabriel cursed again. And if he's alive, Valeria exhaled. Then Nicholas isn't the only ghost walking around. I ran a hand down my face. This was spiraling fast. I had spent years believing Nicholas was my worst nightmare. The man who had controlled me, erased my identity, made me his possession. But now, for the first time, I realized, Nicholas had been hiding from something, too. And that terrified me. I turned to Gabriel. Where do we even start? He thought for a moment. Then, he picked up his phone and made a call. I frowned. Who are you calling? Gabriel's gaze was sharp, focused. A grave robber. The cemetery was silent, cold, the kind of place where the dead were supposed to stay buried. We stood at the edge of the graveyard, watching as a man in a black hoodie worked quickly, pulling up the damp earth. I crossed my arms. Tell me again why this isn't illegal. Gabriel smirked. Because the grave isn't real, remember. I rolled my eyes but said nothing. My heart pounded as the shovel hit something solid. The man wiped sweat from his forehead and looked up at us. You sure you want to see this? Valeria didn't hesitate. Open it. The coffin creaked as the lid was pried open. My breath caught. Inside, nothing. Just dirt. An empty box. A lie buried in the ground. Gabriel let out a slow exhale. Son of a. Then, the man pulled something from the dirt. A single note. Crinkled. Old. He handed it to me. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. There were only 3 words written inside. You're too late. My body went cold. What the hell does that mean? I whispered. Gabriel took the note, his expression hard. It means someone else was here before us. Valeria inhaled sharply, which means someone else is watching. I swallowed hard. For the first time in years, I wasn't just running from Nicholas. Now, I was running from something worse. Something that had already seen us coming. Gabriel clenched his jaw. We need to move. Fast. I nodded, forcing my fear down. What's next? His expression darkened. We find the twin. Because if he was alive, he might be the only one who could tell us what Nicholas was really hiding. Gabriel burned the note. He didn't hesitate, just pulled out his lighter and set it on fire, watching the paper curl and blacken until nothing remained but ash on the cemetery floor. I crossed my arms. That's evidence. No. His voice was flat. That's a warning. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Valeria shifted beside me, her arms tightening around herself. Who do you think left it? Gabriel exhaled. Someone who knows we're looking. I chewed the inside of my cheek. Nicholas. Valeria shook her head. No. We both turned to her. She looked at the empty grave, then back at us. If Nicholas wanted to scare us, he wouldn't be subtle. Her voice was calm, but her hands were clenched. He'd make a statement. A body on our doorstep. A car bomb. Something that screams I own you. She met my gaze. This is different. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. Then who? Valeria hesitated. Then, finally, the twin. Silence. A slow, creeping realization sank into my bones. He wasn't dead. And worse, he knew we were coming. Back at the apartment, Gabriel wasted no time. He dumped files onto the table, flipping through pages, scanning documents, pulling up surveillance photos. Valeria leaned over the mess, frowning. What are we looking for? Gabriel didn't answer immediately. His jaw was tight, his movements sharp. Finally, he pulled out a single page. A birth certificate. 2 names. Nicholas Constantine Laurent. Noah Elijah Laurent. My breath caught. Noah. Gabriel tossed another file on top. A death certificate. Same name. Same date as the empty grave. And yet, it was never processed, Gabriel muttered. Never entered into any official database. Just a single document, to make people believe he was gone. Valeria exhaled. So he disappeared. Gabriel nodded. Or someone made him disappear. I ran a hand down my face. This wasn't just about Nicholas anymore. Somewhere, out there, was a second face. A second set of hands. A second mind that had lived in Nicholas's shadow. A mind that had now turned its attention to us. I swallowed. How do we find him? Gabriel's expression was unreadable. We don't. I stiffened. What do you mean? Gabriel met my gaze, his voice low. If Noah has been in hiding this long, there's only one way to get to him. My pulse quickened. Which is? Gabriel's lips curled into something dangerous. We make him come to us. It was a terrible idea. A reckless, insane, suicidal idea. But it was all we had. Gabriel moved fast, sending out a single message through an old underground network. A whisper that would slip through the right cracks, slide into the right ears. I watched him type. 2 simple words. Still alive. He hit send. The room felt suffocatingly quiet. Valeria exhaled. Now what? Gabriel leaned back, his gaze sharp. Now we wait. I bit my lip. And if he doesn't answer? Gabriel's smile was cold. He will. Because we weren't just looking for him. We had made him curious. And curiosity, that could be just as dangerous as fear. Hours passed. Then a day. Nothing. I barely slept. I didn't leave the apartment. I kept checking my phone, waiting for something, anything. But the silence stretched. Then, on the second night, at exactly 3 a.m., Gabriel's burner phone lit up. A single message. No number. No sender ID. Just a response. Too late. He's watching you. My blood turned to ice. Valeria sucked in a sharp breath. Gabriel cursed. That's not Noah. I swallowed. Then who is it? Silence. Then, Gabriel stood. We're leaving. Now. The apartment door exploded inward. A rush of air. A crack of splintering wood. A gunshot. Gabriel tackled me to the ground. Valeria hit the floor beside me, breathing hard. Another shot, this time from our side. Gabriel fired once, twice, shattering a lamp, sending sparks flying. The figure at the door ducked back. A voice, low, smooth. You shouldn't have come looking. I went cold. Not Nicholas. Not the twin. Someone else. Someone we hadn't seen coming. Gabriel pressed his back to the wall, gun steady. Who are you? The voice chuckled. Does it matter? The air felt suffocating. Valeria grabbed my wrist, whispering, we have to move. I nodded, my breath shaky. Gabriel looked at me. Ready. I wasn't. But I nodded anyway, because we weren't just digging for answers anymore. We were being hunted. The gunfire stopped. Silence stretched, thick and unnatural. Dust swirled in the air, catching in my throat as I pressed my back against the wall. Gabriel's breathing was steady beside me, his grip firm on the gun. Valeria's fingers dug into my wrist, her pulse a frantic drumbeat against my skin. Then, footsteps. Slow, measured. A shadow moved in the doorway. Not Nicholas. Not Noah. But someone who knew exactly what they were doing. A voice, smooth, patient. You've been asking the wrong questions. Gabriel tightened his hold on the trigger. And who the hell are you? A low chuckle. Doesn't matter. I swallowed hard. Then what do you want? The shadow tilted its head. To watch. My stomach twisted. Watch what? A pause. Then, how you lose. My blood went cold. Because this wasn't a warning. It was a promise. We ran. Through the back, down the stairs, bursting into the alley before more gunfire could follow. The city was alive, neon lights flickering above us, but I had never felt more trapped. I glanced at Gabriel. Where do we go? His jaw was tight. Somewhere he won't expect. Valeria muttered, does that place exist? Gabriel didn't answer. He pulled out a burner phone, dialing fast. The line clicked. A voice, rough and annoyed. Jesus, Gabe, do you ever sleep? Gabriel ignored him. We need a place. Now. A pause. Then. Warehouse. District 5. No one follows. Click. Gabriel turned to us. Let's go. I didn't ask questions. Because at this point, I knew, whoever had just saved us might be our only chance at surviving. The warehouse smelled like rust and oil. Dim lights buzzed overhead, flickering against steel beams. And sitting at the center. A man, leaning against a crate, cigarette in hand, watching us with sharp, amused eyes. My stomach clenched. Because even before he spoke, I knew. It wasn't Nicholas, but it might as well have been. Noah Laurent. Alive, real, and smiling like he had been expecting us all along. Valeria tensed beside me. Gabriel's hand hovered near his gun. But Noah, he just exhaled smoke, tapping ash onto the concrete. Well, he drawled. Took you long enough. I clenched my fists. You knew we were coming. He smirked. Sweetheart, I left you the note. My breath caught. Gabriel swore under his breath. Valeria stiffened. Why? Noah flicked the cigarette away, standing slowly. His gaze swept over us, amused and calculating. Because I was getting bored. I swallowed hard. Nicholas is a fool. Noah tilted his head, eyes glinting. He was always too arrogant. Too reckless. His smirk widened. And now, he's desperate. A cold dread settled in my stomach. What do you mean? Noah stepped closer, his voice smooth. I mean, Big Brother made a mistake. I held my breath. Noah leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. He let you escape. The warehouse smelled like rust, but the tension in the air was sharper than the scent of oil and metal. Noah Laurent stood before us, his smirk lazy but his eyes razor sharp. He had always been the shadow trailing behind Nicholas, the whispered name no one dared to speak, the brother everyone assumed was long gone. But here he was. And he had been expecting us. Gabriel's jaw was tight, his fingers twitching toward his gun. You left the note. Noah gave a slow, satisfied nod. I did. Valeria crossed her arms, her eyes burning into him. Why? Noah flicked the last embers from his cigarette before crushing it under his boot. Because I'm tired of watching from the sidelines. His voice lowered, amusement fading. It's time Nicholas loses. I exhaled, my chest tight. You want to help us take him down. Noah's smirk was quick, but there was something colder beneath it. Oh, sweetheart, he said, stepping closer. I don't want to help. His head tilted, his gaze piercing. I want to end him. We needed a plan. And Noah, he already had one. Nicholas is unraveling, he said, rolling up his sleeves as we crowded around a dusty table. The leaks, the betrayals, he's bleeding out, and he knows it. Gabriel nodded. But that makes him more dangerous. Noah's grin was sharp. Exactly. Valeria leaned forward. Then what's our move? Noah placed a burner phone in the center of the table. We make him think he still has a chance. It was a simple plan. Nicholas still had a few loyal men left, desperate, reckless men who would do anything to stay in his good graces. Noah would feed them a rumor that there was a last escape route waiting for him. That the only way out was through us. Nicholas would come running, and we would be waiting. But there was still one thing unanswered. The attack at the apartment, I said, voice steady. Who was it? Noah's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Nicholas didn't send them. I stiffened. Then who? Noah exhaled, his voice quieter now. His last loyal man. The one Nicholas told to clean up his mess. A cold dread settled in my stomach. And did he? Noah met my gaze. He tried. Silence. And then Valeria whispered, is he still out there? Noah's smirk returned. Not anymore. I swallowed hard. We weren't just up against Nicholas. We were up against a man who was losing everything. And that made him the most dangerous version of himself. The dock smelled like salt and rain. The wind was thick with tension. Gabriel's men were in position. Valeria was watching from the shadows. And Noah, he was standing in the open. Waiting. The black car pulled up. The door swung open. Nicholas stepped out. His suit was immaculate. His expression was unreadable, but I could see it. The tension in his jaw. The slight tremor in his fingers. The way his eyes darted, searching for an exit. He knew. He was losing. And for the first time, he was afraid. Noah, he greeted, his voice smooth but edged with steel. Noah smiled, tilting his head. Big brother. Nicholas's eyes flicked to me. Elena. I met his gaze, steady. Nicholas. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You think this is over? I exhaled. I know it is. The signal came in a whisper over the earpiece. Now. The lights flashed on. Men moved in. Nicholas spun, reaching for his gun. Bang. A single shot. Nicholas's body jerked. Then another shot. Then another. He staggered, eyes wide, blood blooming across his chest. His knees buckled. And then, finally, he fell. His breath was ragged, shallow. I knelt beside him, staring into the eyes of the man who had tried to own me. His lips trembled. You should have stayed. I tilted my head. And you should have let me go. His last breath was slow. Then, nothing. The waves crashed in the distance. And Noah Laurent was gone. A week later, I stood at the train station. The city was behind me. The shadows were behind me. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. Valeria had left the day after Nicholas died. She had her own life to rebuild. Gabriel had stayed a little longer. Enough to make sure I was safe. And Noah was gone. Just like that. No goodbyes. No explanations. Only a single message left on my phone. See you around, sweetheart. I wasn't sure if I ever would. But I wasn't going to wait. I stepped onto the train. And for the first time in years, I was free. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an amazing story.